nerds, and welcome to The League, exploring the League of Legends lore from A to Z. My name is Rebecca.
And I'm John.
And my name is Mark.
And today we are talking about the Dark Child, Annie, who was released in February 21st, 2009. She was one of the original, yeah?
I think so. We got a lot of old champions so far. I didn't realize they were all on the A's, but apparently...
They really liked A champions in the beginning there.
They did.
I guess.
It was their thing.
Yeah, that was about what I knew about Annie before reading her bio, is that she was one of the first ones released. And something about a bear.
That was it?
Yeah, she has that like strong hook and like that strong theme. So it's a good starter champion.
I mean, I agree. I think Annie's a great mage to pick up, like, in terms of gameplay, because I think she has a very clear, you follow the stun pattern, you get used to using abilities, which is one of the biggest hurdles for anyone trying to start playing League is, you say, Rebecca, you were talking about not, having the hands on the keyboard, that type of thing, It's, so I love Annie as a starter champion. It's funny you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think Annie is maybe the first champion that I feel like her lore translates super well to her gameplay, and just like, how she looks and her quotes, and I don't know, it's just all kind of right there.
Yeah, it's very much, you can see kind of why she's like a flagstone type champion. Like they kind of got it all right there.
Yeah. On the Riot Universe page, Annie has a bio and a short story called Trouble, and then there's a cinematic, Annie Origins, which is essentially just a cinematic of the bio.
Pretty much, yeah.
Although there were some differences that I'm interested to talk about, at least in terms of the vibes it gave me, I guess.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think both in detail, like actual factual what's happened, and also in terms of general tone. I would agree.
Yeah,
the cinematic definitely kind of goes into a bit more detail on things that the bio itself just kind of gives you a hand wave on.
Yeah, well, one big thing is, Annie has a really, really dark backstory that if you just kind of read it in a bio, it is tragic, but to see it played out, especially like a little girl in these really violent situations, it's very different to visualize it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, indeed, it is affecting. I would say, in a very sincere use of that word. Yeah.
Yeah, especially and again, like everything kind of came together in that cinematic too. Like the music and the art style really reinforced a lot of that emotion that made all of those moments hit that much harder.
Yeah. So John, do you want to give us a summary of the bio?
Sure. So Annie is the child of two mages from Noxus, Grigory the Grey and Amaline. I don't really know how to pronounce it. Amaline. So they were kind of in central Noxus, but when Borum Darkwill kind of came to power within Noxus, it kind of brought some instability, and they wanted to get away from central Noxus just to, be a little bit safer. So they moved to the Iron Spike Mountains, the base of the Iron Spike Mountains, which, fun fact, in the original lore, kind of before the whole Institute of War retcon, the Iron Spike Mountains are where Summoner's Rift is located.
Oh.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that was a fun fact.
I did not know that at all. I've actually learned something today about really old... Oh, man. I love that. That's great.
Yeah, so they're hanging out. They build themselves a little cottage, and they're living there. Emmeline gets pregnant, has a baby. It's Annie.
Shocker.
When Annie's a child, she gets really, really sick, though. She's a very high fever, and then Grigory also gets really sick. So Emmeline kind of leaves them to try and get some water from a nearby river. It's very, very cold out. She never comes back from that little expedition. Luckily, Annie's fever breaks immediately, kind of the day after she left. But she always kind of is waiting for her mom to come back, but she never does. Meanwhile, over time, Grigory meets Leanna, who has her own child, Daisy, and they get married. Now, this is about where the cinematic picks up. Annie's been used to being an only child, so she has a hard time kind of adapting to having a sister. Obviously, Leanna always takes Daisy's side in arguments. Gregory's trying to keep the peace between everybody in the house, but it's clear that Annie just misses her mom and is not a huge fan of Leanna. One time when they're out playing together, tragedy strikes, and Daisy ends up having a fatal accident. In the cinematic, she's actually swept downstream, kind of chasing a ferry across a river, jumping on rocks, slips on a rock, falls. Annie tries to save her, but is unable to. She's kind of holding on to, she hands her, she holds out Tibbers to have her grab on, and unfortunately Tibbers heats up and gets real hot, and Daisy lets go.
I do like how you're giving a very descriptive detail of the summary, and yet had yet to mention Tibbers up until just now.
Tibbers.
Tibbers, come on.
Tibbers. So
her mother had made her Tibbers.
Her mother had made her a stuffed teddy bear named Tibbers. It's her favorite toy in the whole wide world. Probably her only toy in the whole wide world, but still her favorite.
Can be both. They're not mutually exclusive.
That's true.
She's also kind of, as she's been growing up, she has displayed, signs of having latent fire magic. Her father will leave her in front of a fire that he's sure has been out, and it'll be rekindled when he comes back. We see in the cinematic a few times when she gets upset, her fire power will kind of come out of Tibbers. And that's kind of what happens here when Daisy dies. Obviously, Leanna blames Annie. And this part is kind of glazed over in the bio story itself. It just kind of says, tragedy happens, and then Annie's an orphan again.
Well, I actually think the bio almost gave a little bit more detail in a way. The bio says that Leanne tries to destroy Tibbers. Well, I guess no, that does happen in the cinematic. Never mind. I thought the cinematic was going to go on and just have Leanne be all pissed and smack at Annie and not do anything. But yeah, so it does say that Leanne goes after Tibbers to try to,
Yeah, so they're a bit vague in the bio as to what exactly happened and why she's so upset, but basically that whole thing happened with Daisy, and then Leanne's arguing with Gregory, and it's your daughter's a monster. And Annie gets all upset and cries in her room. Her emotions are high, and fire starts, which seems to kind of happen around her. So she accidentally ends up burning the cabin down, and her father tries to save her, and in doing so, he dies in the burning cabin as well. So it's just Annie and Leanna, which Leanna is not enthused about.
Don't worry, she only has about 5 minutes to be unenthused.
Yeah, she's basically, you took everything from me. So then she takes Annie's toy and tries to tear it apart, which, not gonna happen, lady. Annie gets very upset. Tibbers turns into a full-grown bear Tibbers and kills Leanna.
Although we don't see full-grown bear Tibbers in the cinematic.
We just see the silhouette of full-grown bear Tibbers.
Yeah, and you hear a roar. I was very disappointed by that.
You were? I like it. I think it's much like, it's like a horror movie monster. When you show it, that's the money shot. So you gotta really get it ready. I don't know if this was the right one to show it in.
I get that. I definitely just think Tibbers, at surface level, the idea of a teddy bear coming to life sounds really funny, and that he's giant. But Tibbers is terrifying. He's a a flaming giant bear, and I would like to see that.
If you want to see Tibbers in a full cinematic, even though it's not linked anywhere on Universe or even on the wiki, really, watch the Twist of Fate cinematic. Then you get to see Tibbers in its full, ragey, burning glory for at least a few seconds before Baron eats him.
Oh.
Yep. Did you see the statue back when they had it on the grounds? I'm sure you did. The big one.
Yeah.
That was actually intimidating. Tibbers is really scary when you get up close to him in real life, I would
He
say.
really is. So, at the Riot campus, in case you guys haven't seen pictures, there is a life-sized Annie and Tibbers right in the main hallway, and it does actually glow. They have lights inside of it, so Tibbers glows in the dark with the fire.
Yeah, and his eyes
as
glow.
all seems. Yeah, his eyes glow. It's a very cool statue.
Yeah.
And yes, very intimidating. Would not want to fight.
How do we feel about the bio? Was this about what you all expected, or?
I actually thought we'd get... I didn't realize it'd be covering so much of what the cinematic did. I thought maybe the cinematic would be covering like either a different part of the past or something. But I mean, it was fine.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was a lot more enlightening when it was just the bio and there wasn't a cinematic to go along with it. But yeah, I thought it was fine.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. His naming on her father, Grigory the Grey, I think is a holdover from old League lore, where sometimes her mom and dad were part of a cult, and sometimes it wasn't so much a cult, and sometimes they kind of led a group that was called, like the Grey is a name that I think has kind of persisted through Annie lore. So when I saw that, I was a little familiar with some of those older stories, and I saw that, and I very much thought, okay, that's definitely something that's persisted. It's almost like a vestigial name that's kind of stuck around through the ages. It's a weird name for a character, I think, to have this weird Gandalf the Grey almost style name.
Yeah, I actually didn't realize that he was also a mage. I thought just Ameline or whatever her name was.
It doesn't read that way in the cinematic at all, I think.
Yeah.
There are a few points, this and the way that the cinematic talks about her becoming an orphan, where it seems to imply that Lyanna's attempting to destroy Tibbers was kind of the inciting incident for killing both of the parents. I think to me it's probably just this is like almost... It starts to become a question of what's like just a riot inconsistency, where this was written and then the cinematic came out like 2 years later or whatever. I don't know the exact timing. I could be entirely off, but where it's just some things just don't line up and it's just a mistake. And if somebody was taking the time, they would go through and fix that. Does that seem like that's the case here, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and
which is fine. It's a lot of fucking lore. It's a lot of shit.
Yeah, like I wouldn't say it's necessarily an inconsistency, just because they never actually said that she killed both of them. They just kind of left it very vague, and I think they maybe intentionally left it vague with the intention that they could play around more with it later. Like I get the feeling they do that in a lot of their lore. Sometimes they leave things just vague enough that they can introduce new characters to someone and have characters be related, even though it wasn't specified in the first character's lore.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
Like even very recently with God, what's her name? That new gunslinger.
Oh, Senna.
Samira.
No, not Senna. Oh my God, Samira.
Yeah. Just like, leaving things vague enough that like now they can just insert Rel into Samira's backstory and have her kind of be the person that was like very vaguely talked about in Samira's story. Like,
I mean, it's a fair concern to have, frankly. If you want to continue to introduce champions, I don't fault them for it.
Yeah, I think the bio in particular, I'm very cool with it being a bit vague, I guess, because I guess that's what's come out first, right? So they need that ready at a certain time, whereas the stories they can kind of linger on and work more. What do we think happened to Annie's mother? Because
I think that's a really good question.
Yeah, that is one thing that she's going to get ice water, which not okay, but
what do you want? They're living out in frontier times.
Yeah,
who the fuck knows?
And then she just disappears, and we're assuming that she has done some kind of sacrifice, is where my brain went.
Yeah, kind of like made a deal with the dire bears to be like, hey, I will give my life if you protect her, like cure my like save my daughter basically and watch over her or something like that.
Yeah. I would be very interested in that story for sure.
Yeah, that would be a great thing to read.
Champion.
And that champion, Annie's mom.
Can turn into a bear. That way we get another shape changer champion. Get like a Nidalee style, but it's a bear.
Oh, that'd be
Make
cool.
It Riot. Come on.
Riot. Half woman, half bear champion, please.
She's a bear that just carries around a woman doll.
She
throws the doll and it turns into a woman.
just reverse Annie.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, it's an interesting connection when you look at the cinematic because, I mean, Daisy, that's probably the same river, right? That Daisy drowned in?
Probably.
Surely.
Yeah.
That river is just taking lives left and right.
Yeah.
They really should put up a fence or something. I don't know. They need a crossing guard or somebody.
Right? Stop having the only way across it be slippery rocks that you have to walk on.
So are we going to talk about the cinematic as well? I mean, we
Yeah.
it's so tied into the bio. I would say, I think when we were talking about Amumu, I talked about that video being my second favorite thing. This is my most favorite thing that Riot's ever done creatively.
That's why
I
you
love it.
waited, because we were so close.
Yeah, I was like, it's fine. I'll just say that because it's not some Zed or Yasuo thing,
Yeah, it is really well done. They picked an art style that's going to hold up for a long, long time. Very cartoonish, I guess, almost like a watercolor painting. I don't know art,
It's
so
like an animated watercolor, basically, which is actually something that I don't feel like I've seen anywhere else. Like, it's very, very unique, like immediately striking when you're watching it.
yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I remember seeing a few like splashes of just stills before it came out, and I knew that I was gonna love it. And when it came out, I loved it. It's my favorite. This is my favorite thing. I gush about it. And watching it again, I love being able to watch it. It's great.
Well, gosh, what do you think it is about this one?
I think because it's hard to say. It's similar to what I like about the Amumu thing, in that it feels like, I don't know, there's heart to it, I guess I would say. There's an emotion that's being communicated that's not like what you would expect from so many other things that Riot has made, which are great, but like the Rise music video might be my third favorite, and that's an entirely different thing of this is just fucking dope. I just want to watch this shit over and get hype. But this is like, oh, I could sit down. This is something I would show to someone as like, this is something I really like about League, which is, I don't know, the way sometimes these characters really, someone like, I don't know, it's hard for me to just put into words, but I feel like someone just saw this and said, I really want to, here's an opportunity to do some really cool storytelling, and let's do it in this way that is, I don't know, I wouldn't expect something like this from most other, video game IPs, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I do like a lot, and I don't think we necessarily touched on it a lot with the Amumu one, but kind of having some insider knowledge on that one, it was very much like that release was not associated in any way with any sort of new Amumu skins that were coming out. Amumu isn't like a hot character that was going to draw in crowds or anything like that. Like, he wasn't a super picked character. That was just something that like Christian Link was like, hey, this would be really cool. And then they were like, yeah, it would be really cool. Like, you want to do it? Like, I would like to do it. And I really like that opportunity to pursue things that you just think will be fucking cool.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that. So Christian used to be in charge of all of the music, pretty legendary at Riot. I feel like I remember you telling me that they wanted Christian to make a song, like another kind of music to promote the game, and he said, I'll do it if I can make it about Amumu. Because that was his favorite champion. I don't know what, now I feel like I have all these Riot myths in my head. I don't know which one's true. But yeah, it's a passion project, and you can tell, and it tells a full story in a way that a lot of their other animations don't, which again, they're very hype. They're really hype to watch. The fighting ones are really fun, and seeing like what champions are going to pop up and save each other, like, that's very fun. But this one's like, it might make you cry.
It might.
Yeah.
No matter how many times you've seen it.
I mean, you're not wrong. It again, this one also affects me, with a big capital A. It's like, man, I don't know. It's hard to put into words.
I will say one of my favorite points of the video too was just the shot after her dad gets hit by kind of the falling beam in the house, and then he drops her, and the shot like goes boof, and then she hits the ground and immediately like bounces up, and then it transitions to the scene that the cinematic started on. I thought that was such a fucking cool editing moment.
There are a couple of really good scene transitions like that. I think in that whole sequence, there are a couple. I would have to. It's hard to describe them specifically and capture the effect, but that was something I noted in rewatching it. I really enjoyed that
tear one.
Yeah, sure.
The tear dropping and then flipping and then turning into the bottom of a door jam. Like, again, hard to describe, but like go back and watch the scene where like a single tear falls from Annie's eye near the end before she catches the house on fire. So fucking cool.
I wish I knew more about animation, because I don't know if that's like good storyboarding or if that's good just general shot composition or what. But whoever was doing that part of it, you know, S plus. Take a fucking loot box. God damn it.
I imagine it's storyboarding, although I'm not positive.
I would guess, but I don't fucking know. I'm an idiot, you know?
Yeah. I've watched a lot of like animators react to the cinematics, and I know that like the animators themselves are very much like they're always talking about the director. Like, I don't know who the director was on this animation, but like holy shit.
Yeah, it is great. There's a lot of tragedy here. It really, because the bio kind of talks about how Annie isn't getting along with Daisy and Leanna, and then it jumps to the tragedy happening, and Daisy dies, the little girl. But in the cinematic, we get a scene where Annie's dad tells her, you know, one day you're going to be playing together before you know it. And then they are. Like, that's the next transition, is they're giggling and they're having fun. They're turning into sisters. And right as that happens, that's when Daisy dies. So, it's really, really painting, like, just how tragic Annie's backstory is, that you don't really catch in the bio so much. It is also the first thing I've seen or watched that made me immediately want to start playing the champion. I just wanted to start playing Annie because it just was so fun to think about. The next thing is a short story that I feel like changed Annie's character a bit in a way that I find a little confusing, so I definitely want to talk about that. But the short story is called Trouble. It's by Michael... does anyone know how to say his last name?
I do not. I'm sure my guess would be worse than yours.
Ichajo.
I do not know.
Yi Chao, maybe? Michael Yi Chao, I think. I'm not positive how to say his name. I did look it up, and then it just immediately erased from my brain. And also, I listened to like 10 different pronunciations of it. None of them are the same. Anyway, but do you want to give us a summary on the short story, Mark?
Sure. Yeah, it's pretty short in terms of the actuals what happens, but this one's told from the perspective of a bartender called Marcin, I think is his name. And I assume this is in the northern frontier of Noxus, about where Annie and her parents originally settled, because it seems like she's kind of just roaming that area by the end of her bio. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, so he's tending bar, cold winter night, and Annie shows up, this little innocent enough looking girl, and she orders milk at the bar, and a large surly brigand starts eyeing her up for kidnap and ransom, I think is his original kind of suspicion, where he's like, oh yeah, your parents would pay a lot of money for you, wouldn't you? And Annie kind of says, oh, they're dead. And then the bartender gives her milk, and she pulls out a fat stack of coins and just lets it all go. And she's like, oh, oops. And you know, there's coins just going everywhere. And the brigand's like, oh, I'll take that money. And Annie kind of warns him off, kind of mentions Tibbers eating the man who they got the coins from out on the road, who tried to stop them. And the brigand, you know, kind of scoffs at her, and he takes Tibbers, tries to pull him away from her, and Annie gets very, very evil sounding, I guess you would say. Her voice goes low, and she says, don't take Tibbers, he doesn't like being pulled. Now throughout the story, Marcin is constantly kind of remembering the way you avoid trouble is do this or that. But he doesn't avoid trouble in this case, and he looks around, and all of a sudden just fucking shit goes wild. Chaos just erupts in this inn. Fire, you know, the sounds of men dying and screaming, and he peeks up over the bar, and he sees this giant. There's a really cool description of you know, Tibbers, obviously, this giant shadow bear, and they talk about sinew, you know, piecing together the pieces of it, and fire coming out from the what would you call them? The seams, I guess you would say. Yeah. I thought that was really cool, the idea of it being like actual, you know, like tendons and shit that was holding Tibbers together.
Yeah, he turned into meat.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. And Tibbers is sitting there holding that brigand, and Annie has this great line. She's like, "You're right, Tibbers. He didn't like being pulled either," which I loved. I thought that was great. But Tibbers has killed everything in that inn, and they let the bartender leave, and Annie and Tibbers leave out through the inn as it collapse. It says it collapses as they leave. So I hope we don't know if Marson survived. He may have. He may not have. But that's trouble, in a nutshell.
Yeah. I do really like the way this is written. Again, from an outsider's perspective, looking at the champion, I don't know why I prefer these short stories. Maybe it's because we know the champions as outsiders as well, so it's just kind of easier to connect in that way. I also like how in the prose he says that Annie hop, skip, jumps away, which is a delightful little nugget in there. If you play Annie, she says that as you're walking all the time. Hop, skip, jump. Just like that. One thing that I felt a little I don't want to say put off, because I really liked this and I really liked the cinematic, but Annie feels way younger in this to me. She almost seems like a girl who's so young that she doesn't really understand what's happening at all, and I don't know, she just felt younger, whereas in the cinematic she felt more like she was, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8, and a little bit more sinister in that she's kind of discovering what she can do, and maybe as she leaves her home, she would start doing it intentionally, whereas in the short story, it almost feels like it's all an accident still. Does that make sense?
See, I kind of got a different feel on it. Like, I kind of felt that everything she was doing was intentional. Like, the whole putting all of the gold on the counter instead of just taking out enough to pay, like it was all just a massive bait.
Baited and outsmarted.
Did she want to kill everyone there? Was that, what do you think her end goal was? Or just that guy? She wanted to, like, test him and see if he would.
Just like, just to see.
Yeah, I guess maybe it was the dialogue in a way felt younger, but she could have been doing that intentionally as well. Kind of aging herself down in a way to lure people closer. That makes sense. Yeah.
I was going to say, I kind of err with you, Rebecca. I think there's, in general, a bit of there's a bit of a divide between Annie and as she's depicted in some places, and Annie as she's depicted in other places. And I think there's like a missing link almost, where I believe you that this Annie became this Annie, but I do need the fossil record for eventually. You got to give it to me eventually to prove it.
That's it. Yeah. So in the cinematic, it's again a really tragic story, and I don't think she necessarily feels bad about Leanna, but she certainly is upset about Daisy. She's devastated that her father is dead. But when we see her some time later, we have no idea how much time later, she is now just a mass murdering, heartless demon child. And I kind of was under the impression that Annie was just like that. If you don't watch the cinematic and you just play the game and read this short story, you would take Annie as being just like the Antichrist, I guess. Just like a completely evil child. But in the cinematic, she's not, she's a real ass kid who, sometimes lights the house on fire.
See, I thought that the end of the cinematic too, like the whole burning of the Daisy, like that was kind of what that was symbolic of.
Yes, but I feel like it's too different for me. The cinematic Annie to the short story Annie are just two drastically different girls, and I would like an in-between of, I don't know. Yeah,
I would agree. I think that if you were going to devote the resources and time to it, an eventual visual update of Annie the goal would be marrying those two concepts, and also in terms of lore, bringing her into Runeterra, because right now she very much is isolated in a way that she doesn't interact with anyone really. She just kind of roams around in her little spot and not much happens, Yeah.
No related characters in universe.
Yeah. I would really like to see her, make her way into the lore in someone else's story. And I'd like to see her a little bit older, I think. Not much older, but especially in game. I think they make her look very young in game. I would say she's like 5 in game, whereas in the cinematic, she looks like 8 or 9. Like, I don't know.
And also the cat ears is also that's a whole other thing. It's like,
I forgot.
So did she get those in the forest or what? What happened?
Did she rip them off an actual cat?
Amelia crafted, sat there knitting these beautiful cat ears and backpacks. It's like, it's just such an obvious holdover from her original design. And I would, I said, if you're going to do a big visual update, I know she got a bit of one to get her effects, up to snuff, but a big update would be let's make her Annie as
Yeah,
we...
Volibear.
Yeah, that type of thing, exactly. Let's make her Annie in that true sense.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of going back to your earlier note on the why it's kind of interesting seeing these stories from an outsider perspective. I feel like one reason that I really enjoy it is that pretty much all of the League of Legends characters, like, they are all like larger than life. They all have these like crazy supernatural abilities that other people in the universe do not seem to have.
That's true.
And when you're seeing stories told through their perspective, it's super normalized. That's just something they can do, and it's never really thought of as like, oh, this is pretty cool. When you see an outsider and like this little girl walks into a bar and then her fucking teddy bear turns into a giant bear, like, you finally get to see like, oh no, this is weird. This shouldn't be like this.
I think it would take a very particular type of writing to go from their point of view. I think a story from Annie's point of view could be riveting, but it would take a very, very special kind of writing and a very good writer to pull it off.
It'd have to be done better than Aatrox.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes. No shade. Yeah, son. I would agree. I think you got a really good point about that.
Do we have any other thoughts on the story?
I also really liked it. I really enjoyed this. This is definitely in the category of you should read. Even if you're not like a massive Annie fan, it's just a fun little, almost horror story. Rebecca, how do you, as a self-professed horror fan, how do you feel about the fact that it feels like there's so much horror, or at least, in League so far anyway, that we've gone through? I feel like there's a lot of it. Am I wrong?
Yeah. My only thoughts on that would maybe be that there are a lot of writers contributing to this and a lot of horror fans, so maybe it just kind of bleeds in. And horror and fantasy is fairly easy and fun to mix, so that could be a part of it.
Sure.
Yeah, I think when you have this many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, everyone's kind of personalized sub-genres are going to blend into your giant genre, which in this case is fantasy. So, yeah, I'm not really sure what else could maybe cause it. Because when you look at League, you don't think horror, but a lot of the short stories end up being slightly horrific.
Maybe that's just the reality of League actually being real. Or
That's
like, oh,
true.
Fuck.
Maybe League is horror this whole time, and we didn't know.
I mean, if you think about it, man, why would you want to live in a world where any of this shit was happening?
That's
Hard
true.
pass.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't want to be one of these people in the stories who's just having a drink at a bar and then a fucking bear explodes me. That'd suck.
Right? Most of those people didn't do shit. That bartender got burned. He might not have survived that collapsing in, and all he did was, serve some milk.
It's funny because I feel like he was more of a neutrally gray character, because he was very much like, yeah, he wanted to try to protect Annie in a way, but not at any point was he willing to put his life on the line to protect Annie. He was about to walk off.
Oh yeah, he's like, oh,
that's very true.
Oh, he's definitely about to take this child. I'm gonna hop in the back room real quick.
Yeah, like he was dipping. Like that guy was out. He was like, when
That's
you
a
see
good
a ghost in
point.
Phasmophobia, he was ready to go.
We got the EMF 5. We're good.
That's the only way you survive.
It's like it says. He knows how to avoid trouble,
Yeah, I'm curious about Annie in a way, because she let him live because, he was kind of nice to her. But ultimately, he was about to let her get kidnapped. I wonder if she's truly Dexter, if she really only harms those who deserve it, and accidentally her dad/stepmom. Although her stepmom was kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not killed by a giant shadow bear asshole, but
that's true.
Yeah. But she's a child. She doesn't have that level of nuance. Right?
Yeah, that was a whoopsie. A whoopsie daisy.
Whoopsie doodle.
A whoopsie.
Daisy.
That one's my bad, guys.
So I did look up a little bit when we started the story, and we kind of talked about, or not the story, but the bio, and we were talking about how Annie's parents left Noxus because of the instability by Borum Darkwill. I did look up a little bit kind of about historical Borum Darkwill stuff to figure out what exactly that instability was, because I was curious what would cause like kind of two seemingly powerful mages to like leave Noxus because it was too dangerous.
Yeah, it specifically says mages leave, and I also tried to find some stuff about why the mages specifically, and Borum Darkwill is a name that is all like it's all across League lore. So I'm curious to see what you found.
Yeah, so while I couldn't necessarily find something specific about why mages would be targeted, I did see a few. I have kind of theories. So Borum Darkwill in general he was the head of Noxus, and he was trying to crack immortality. Basically, he wanted to figure out how to not die. And as time progressed, he became like increasingly desperate with trying to figure this out. So it kind of started with, having, I guess, like LeBlanc try and help him find a cure. And then he decided to invade Ionia because he figured that, they have artifacts there that might be able to help him become immortal. And then when Ionia started fighting back, he was like, all right, we'll just send children there then. I bet they won't fight children. And that's kind of when he sent in Swain and Singed to kind of cause crazy havoc there. And my guess would be that with the growing paranoia and desperation with which he was searching for immortality, that the mages there probably felt like, oh no, he's probably going to ask us to do some shit for him. And then if we can't, he's probably just going to fucking kill us. That's about where he's at right now.
Yeah.
Luckily, he did not live long enough for that to happen. Because Swain found power first and fucked him real good.
Hell yeah, Swain.
Like, yeah. Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty suitable explanation for it. That all hunts for me. That all tracks. Whatever is the word that we use.
Any other last Annie thoughts?
Yeah, I got two. The first one is about the cinematics. So the weird pixie that they follow, is that Pix? Is that Lulu's Pix?
Oh.
It looks exactly like Pix.
I didn't even think about that. Where's Lulu from? Do we know? Probably where Yordles are from.
I went and looked at the Lulu lore. She is a Yordle. She's involved with a glade, like an eternal glade that I think the Yordles originally spring from. And Pix is, her pixie friend. Pix is kind of a troublemaker. There is a bit I read in some story about Pix picking the, gosh, I want to say wings or legs off of insects or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah. So I don't know. Pix it might be a little bit more nefarious than we might think. I don't know, but it certainly looks like Pix. If it's not Pix, I would say it's at least whatever Pix is, a fairy of some kind. I don't know for sure. But
interesting.
I mean, it's really dark, right? Pix killing children.
That is fucking dark.
I guess it's an accident, but still, god damn.
So many accidental deaths of children.
Right. The second thing is, well, so I have three things. The second thing is Daisy. Is Daisy Ivern's Daisy? Because Ivern's golem is called Daisy. And if you go and read the lore, it talks about how he found a river stone. Like, what was it? I need to find the exact specific thing. He found a wounded stone golem. Seeing that it was fading, he fashioned a new heart from a river pebble and named her Daisy after the flowers that sprouted from her. So, Daisy drowned in a river. Does that mean that pebble has Daisy's soul or some shit?
I'd really like that, honestly.
I had heard that theory.
I think it kind of tracks for me. It makes me feel really bad when I play Ivern because I feel like Daisy's kind of a useless piece of shit when I play him. But
well,
she's a child. It's not her fault.
Tracks with the lore, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a coincidence, I would say, and it could just be the big C, but maybe it's just an X-file. We'll just figure it out later, I guess. The last thing I was going to say about Annie is that I think Annie kind of stands in a unique position in that there's not a lot of children who are champions. There's Nunu, who's the one who's a human child, I think. Then there's kind of Fizz and kind of Gnar. But Annie's the one who does all the harm and the damage. So she's kind of a unique champion in that way. Almost everyone else, I mean, yeah, essentially everyone else is a big monster or at least an adult. Lux, maybe the youngest who's not, a child.
Yeah, I guess if you count, I mean, this is another one of those weird like time rule type things. But I guess if you
Zoe,
count someone like Zoe,
yeah, Zoe, I was gonna say also is weird because she's, from her perspective, a child, but from our perspective, she's thousands of years old or some crazy shit. I don't know.
Mentality of a child despite being alive all those years.
Does Annie? Yeah. Annie does age though, right? There's nowhere in any lore that says she's not going to age.
As far as I know. As far as I know, she's just a pyromancer human.
Yeah. We're just catching her, here. Interesting. I'd like an adult Annie.
Yeah.
Like a time split type line.
I would just like to see, because, they kind of span a lot of years in the League lore sometimes. So it would be nice to get a story of, what they think Annie would be as a 30-year-old woman.
Yeah, I would definitely be down.
Who still carries teddy bears? I bet she'd get teased.
I bet at that point they all know who she is and nobody's teasing her.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places you could go with that, really. The sky's kind of the limit for Annie. She could go anywhere.
I'd like to see her turn good.
Sure. Yeah, I think it could work for sure.
Goodish.
Goodish. Use her powers for, that like gray line good where she
like a collie.
Oh, I was thinking even more gray line.
Okay.
But I guess a collie does murder a lot of folks to keep balance. Yeah, that's a probably.
Yeah. Yeah, Collie's got kind of a dark streak to her. We didn't talk about it much, but I think they do kind of capture that in some of her short story. She's got a dark streak, and I thought they did a good job of that with Annie's cinematic. There are a few moments talking again about it where you can see that she enjoys, having that power. She hurts Daisy and it has a big smile on her face for a half second.
I didn't do this on purpose, but it was fucking cool, and I'd do it again.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is Annie. Thank you so much for listening. Oh, yeah. John and I do another podcast together where we watch the highest rated movie and the lowest rated movie in a franchise and talk about it. It's called The Series of Unfortunate Sequels. We just watched A Christmas Prince, which was very fun. But yeah, join us next week when we get to talk about our first newish champion, the Weapon of the Faithful, Aphelios.